Belarus really is a women's-led revolution. Hello, welcome to Dangerous Policy, a channel aimed at intelligent people wanting to discuss important issues facing life and society. Now, everybody knows that I'm a critic of certain aspects of woke culture, but there are genuine heroines out there who are changing the world for the better at enormous personal risk. And at the top of that list are the women leading the charge to free Belarus. So as you would all know, Alexander Lukashenko has been the dictator of Belarus since 1994. He won a impossible victory in the recent August 9 elections. And ever since then, there has been mass uprisings all across the country. The primary opposition figure, Mrs. Tikhanovskaya, she managed to escape across the border to Lithuania. So thanks again to the Lithuanians for harboring her. And I'll come back to Lithuania's contribution. But there's also what's called a coordination council that has been set up by opposition figures. There's 7 people, prominent women among them, and one who I wasn't aware until recently was a prominent figure, Svetlana Alexievich, who is a Nobel laureate in literature. And she is also one of, if not my favorite living authors, right? So she writes these books that are both literature and journalism. She interviews people, and when she writes not just a report of what they've done, but she writes their experience in a way that you can live yourself. So there's a couple of books in particular that you are must-reads. There's The Unwomanly Face of War that recounts the stories of the Soviet women on the Eastern Front in their own voice. And there is Voices from Chernobyl. Now, that book was the basis for the HBO miniseries Chernobyl in terms of the personal stories that you see throughout. So universally acclaimed miniseries on that disaster. That is largely the work of Svetlana Alexievich's writings. And within Belarus, and indeed within Russia, she is someone who has enormous moral authority. She speaks with the voice of, and in a Slavic sense, of all women, I would say. She has a very gendered way of speaking, and she gives this maternal sense of the Slavic soul. And I know many women personally who are devoted to her, and many men who venerate her as a living Orthodox saint, if you like someone who is above any kind of personal reproach. Now, she is the only member of the Coordination Council who has not been arrested, okay? Because, first of all, half of the ambassadors of Europe have decided to move in with her to basically give visibility to anything that might happen to her. And secondly, because I think even the Russian people would respond in a degree of uproar if she were arrested and persecuted in a direct way, because she is the one person in all of Belarus who clearly has more respect and veneration than the leaders of Belarus themselves. So anything that happened to her, like if Alexander Lukashenko was so foolish as to arrest her or worse, then there would be an immediate revolution. She would be a martyr that the whole world would rally around, and she's someone that I personally deeply respect and find not only her writings moving, but also her sense of thoughtfulness and generosity. So when she talks about asking Lukashenko to go, it's not in the context of seizing power and having a violent revolution and reprisal. She says, no, we're not interested in having a coup. We're interested in having a dialogue that sees Lukashenko move on and his supporters be reintegrated into a free Belarus in a way that we all move forward together as one people. And she's probably the one person at 72 years of age who could keep the whole show together. Like if I think she would be able to single-handedly suppress a violent insurrection, a civil war in Belarus. I genuinely believe that if she said everyone needs to come together and work out their issues, that out of personal respect for Svetlana Alexievich, they would actually do that. She has a genuine sense of papal authority over the Slavic soul. So great that she's involved. And I will read out to you something that she wrote the other day to kind of describe the experience that she's currently going through. So this was shared with me by a Lithuanian friend, actually. So here we go. So it's a pretty good translation. Okay, this is from Svetlana Alexievich. There is no one left of my friends and associates in the opposition's coordination council. They are all in prison or they have been thrown out of the country. The last, Maxim Zinak, was taken today. First, they seized our country, and now they are seizing the best of us. But hundreds of others will come and fill the places of those who have been taken from our ranks. It is the whole country which has risen up, not just the coordination council. I want to say again what I have always said, that we were not attempting to start a coup. We did not want to split the country. We wanted to start a dialogue in society. Lukashenko has said he won't speak with the street, but the streets are filled with hundreds of thousands of people who come out to protest every Sunday and every day. It isn't the street. It is the nation. People are coming out to protest with their small children because they believe they will win. I also want to address the Russian intelligentsia, to call it by its old name. Why have you remained silent? We hear very few voices supporting us. Why don't you speak when you can see this proud little nation being crushed? We are still your brothers. To my own people, I want to say this. I love you and I am proud of you. And now there is another unknown person ringing at the door. Her ability to address the Russian people should not be underestimated. I mean, she has a veneration that even Putin himself, I'm sure, respects. So her direct participation will mean reform in Belarus. Lukashenko cannot, through just sheer force of oppression, maintain and suppress the nation of Belarus in perpetuity when you've got someone like Svetlana Alexievich against you. So ultimately this will happen. And then other women have come out as well. So in addition to these, Angela Merkel has made a statement the other day calling on Lukashenko to go. That's a pretty bold thing for the German leader because, as I said before, she's got enough problems with Russia right now in terms of maintaining the Nord Stream pipeline, the fact that she's got Alexei Navalny in her borders recovering from the Novichok poisoning. So her support for Belarus represents a real break with Russia. And last but not least is Maria Kolesnikova. Now, she's someone who was kidnapped right off the street. She was a member of the coordination council I just referred to, and she was kidnapped, and then her associates were also kidnapped by masked men in van, whisked off the street. Now, we know sort of what happened to her now, right? At first, it was a mystery, and people had grave fears for her safety. But her associates were dumped across the border into Ukraine, right, and said not to come back. Miss Kolesnikova herself allegedly was driven to the border, was told either you'll go across the border whole or in pieces, and she took out her passport and tore it up so she wouldn't be able to get across the border. They drove her back to Minsk, the capital, where she has been imprisoned since. So this completely obliterates any legitimacy Lukashenko could even pretend to claim, because he has been kidnapping the opposition figures and dumping them across the border and threatening their lives or imprisoning them, right? So Miss Kolesnikova, an extraordinarily brave person who, on pain of being killed, instead of being forcibly expelled from her home country, tore up her own passport and threw it out like the window of a car in which she had been personally kidnapped. I mean, that is, who has that kind of courage? Like who, So enormous bravery on the people that want to liberate this nation. And then listening to Lukashenko, he's basically saying that if I go, then my supporters will be slaughtered. Well, let's be generous to that argument and say, there are other dictators out there who have legitimate claims to that. So, for example, Bashar al-Assad of Syria, one thing you can say for him is that he does protect the Druze, he protects the Alawites, he protects the Christians. And if he were to go, it's unclear what the Sunni majority would do to them in a ethnically riven country in the midst of a civil war, right? So, but that is a claim that Lukashenko is trying to take on board for a people that are largely unified. And when you've got leaders like Svetlana Alexeyevich, who can absolutely keep the country together, then his claims are just about his own power. It's not about anybody else but himself. But I don't deny the likelihood that Russia will continue to prop him up, because Lukashenko makes the point, and I think it has, and it's getting a lot of play in the Russian press, that if he goes, then Russia will be next. And perhaps the poisoning of Alexei Navalny is tied up in this. So Lukashenko is trying to cling to power for no reason other than to perpetuate his own power. He's not interested in having a dialogue with the opposition that would see him peacefully removed. He could move to Russia. We'd be perfectly safe. That they could have a transition to of power in Belarus in a way that was acceptable not only to the Belarusian people, but also gives Russia a sense of security and allows Belarus to build ties with the West. And so there's one male figure that deserves a shout out in all of this, other than the Belarusians themselves, which is the president of Lithuania, Gitanas Nausėdas. I apologize if I pronounce it incorrectly, and who has led the charge, who has kept visibility on this situation, who has made sure that the rest of the world pays attention to this. His own ambassadors are all there. All the Baltic states' ambassadors are living with Svetlana Alexeyevich. They are recognizing the opposition, and they're keeping the dissidents and those expelled from Belarus safe and able to have a government in exile. So big shout out to Lithuania for the home front, if you like, giving the Belarusian opposition ways to operate and continue to free their country. And I'll just say this to Russia: if Svetlana Alexeyevich is against you, just think about it. Just think about it. And her question to the Russian intelligentsia: you can't sustain this. This isn't going to work. Aside from the fact that it's morally wrong, it's going to be ineffectual. So find a way to convince Lukashenko to go and engage with Svetlana Alexeyevich, who you're not going to find a more generous interlocutor than her. If she is not able to wield influence over the country going forward, then somebody else will, and it'll most likely be the leader of the most vicious, anti-Lukashenko, organized militant group possible that are not going to work with you in the future, right? So work with those that actually have your best interests at heart. As for the Belarusian people, in awe. As for those women I just mentioned, better people than I. So I just want to draw attention to that. If you found value in this discussion, I will continue to cover this subject, certainly. Please like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.